Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is the weekly spinner rack on Comic Tropes After Dark. I'm your host, Chris. What is it? Well, probably you already know. Probably you're somebody that's already watched this, in which case, welcome back. But if it's your first time, a sincere welcome. This is a show about comic books, specifically the latest comic books that came out in the past week, and the comic book news of the week. So we've got some of both. Think of it a little bit like a late night talk show about comic books specifically. So to that end, let's get straight to the opening monologue. This is brief, folks, but I do have some little bits of news that I wanted to touch on here at the top of the show. So this week, I don't know if you saw it, but Marvel and DC announced a team up between Supergirl and Blade. Yeah, that actually is true. I'm not making that part up. Supergirl, of course, gets her powers from the sun, and Blade is part vampire. So their enemy is scheduling. You see what I did there? A delayed reaction, but I'll take that. I'll accept that. I think that we definitely will go into further detail in a little bit on the show, but James Tynion announced that he's funding a new non-profit comic convention in Brooklyn. And I think that that's nice, because why limit making a profit to, comic book artists? Why limit them to being non-profit when you can start a whole organization full of people that can not make a profit off of comics? I think that that's fair. I think that just makes sense. Not 100% sure if I got my delivery right on that one. And finally, still talking about that festival in Brooklyn. The focus on this convention is said to be inclusivity and accessibility, which I think is nice, because now everyone can equally not afford hotel rooms in Brooklyn. A little bit of a quick start there. All right. That is plenty of chicanery and nonsense. The rest of the show is always deathly serious. We just, as soon as the jokes are done at the top of the show, we're all going to just get a little more serious, because we're talking about comic books. There's nothing funny about comic books. All right, maybe there's a little bit funny. Let me give a shout out to all these wonderful people in the chat. This is awesome. Let's go, Nix. What the heck? Did I come into a New York audience? Yosh. That's an impression, apparently, of Donald Glover as Yoshi in the new Super Mario Galaxy movie, which I endured. I can talk about that later tonight. Here's what we're going to do tonight, folks, while I'm just giving a shout out here. To lay it out for you, we are going to do some comic book news. We are then going to do some comic book reviews, and then we'll have sort of a cool down while I draw and just talk about other stuff that's going on in the nerd sphere, and take questions from all of you. I can update you on where I'm at with my flood damaged house. Thank you, Steve. First super chat of the night, maybe only super chat of the night. Might be the only super chat. Let's see. Time for some Baja Blast colored super chat. I appreciate it. I am having coffee, but at least it's in a blue cup. I assume that works. Yes, people giving me little Joe, little. Of course I want a big laugh, but I'll settle for a Randy, good to see you, buddy. Losing money isn't a great business model, but it's how I roll. I am incorrigible. We have so much to talk about that I don't know if I can catch up with all of this. But I do want to point one thing out before I get started with the news real quick. I'm going to be doing 2 claim sales, basically sort of co-hosting existing claim sales, where the participants that do these things are helping give me a portion of the profits towards repairing my wife and my home, which has been severely damaged. We've gotten our nearly final estimates. They're definitely higher than we were initially hoping for, but we'll manage. People have been very generous with a GoFundMe campaign, and that is listed in the description if you're in a position to help. I mean, even $1 or $2 adds up. So we're grateful for any. And if not, like just kind words or shares are also nice. But here's what I'm going to do. Next week, at this same time, I am going to do sort of a brief bit of news, and then we're going to roll into simulcasting on my main Comic Tropes channel to get a bigger audience, as well as with Dynamite Comics, the EXP. That's a YouTube channel they've got full of all sorts of shows. Nick Barucci is going to be auctioning off some of his personal collection of original comic book art. So you can get some really cool comic book art, and a portion of those funds would be benefiting my wife and I. And then about a week after that, I'm going to drive up and hang out with Comic Tom. If you know Comic Tom 101, he doesn't live too far. And I'm going to sit in on one of his Whatnot streams. So I'm going to be doing 2 claim sales. One of them will be on this channel next Monday. Just so you know, it's going to be a slightly different show. I'll still do some news, but then we're going to roll into a claim sale, and we'll just see how it goes. I think I have to try these things. And I like those because that's somebody getting something out of it. Thank you, Dr. Schubill. Second super chat of the night. Second. Thank you. And another from Steve. Steve, you might like the next Comic Tropes episode that I'm working on because the Mets get mentioned more than once. So, with all that said, thank you for listening to some preamble. And let's keep going with the show. I'm going to throw up a banner so that you know where we're at. If you're joining late or you come back, you can just sort of get a sense of where things are. I'll add chapters as well once this is finished streaming. But with all of that said, let's get into the news of the week.
We're sitting on top of the story of the century here.
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
Hi guys, this is April O'Neil from Channel 6 News, and I am here in beautiful New York City.
All right, that's me over there. Can you believe it? I literally jumped into the shower and soaked myself for that photo. And then did a little bit of Photoshop as well to add more dripping water onto it. But a lot of that is actually real, done in camera. I just got myself absolutely soaked. It's representing, of course, the fact that I've gone through a flood. Let's see. A Stephen S. tribute episode? That might be overstating things, Steve. I'm just saying I think you'll like the next Comic Tropes. Anyway. Folks, let's get into the news. And I'm going to start with this. Take a look at this up here. This is actually holding a famous comic that you probably, if you know comics, have already recognized. But oh my God, this is so crazy. I have no idea how much this is going to cost, but I would guess a fortune. Let's talk about it. Argent Comics, some sort of new high-end publisher that's going to produce really high-end versions of classic comics, beginning with the Alan Moore, Brian Bolland book, The Killing Joke. Decent enough book to start with, I suppose. Every page is a Geely print. And technically that means you can't print Geely double-sided. So they are by hand producing 2 Geely prints and then fastening them together with some sort of patent pending process that they have so that you have these super nice pages with the absolute best printing and most vibrant colors we are currently capable of printing. It's insane. It was a Comic Tropes thumbnail. Darn it. It's nice to see Andy. I'm sorry I confused you. Oh, and by the way, this part here that looks like a camera, that's aluminum. And it holds the book. And then this front part, that's actually a detachable focus lens. It's got magnets on it. This is goat skin leather. The little buttons say "ha" on them. They're stamped. This is crazy. Yeah, I don't know how much it is yet, folks. They haven't said. The Killing Joke that they're printing will actually have both colors. If you don't know, oh shoot, I forget the name of the original colorist. I should have looked it up. Darn it, I forgot, and now it's not going to come to me right now. The original colorist used very psychedelic, vibrant colors that I think were the most appropriate for the story. It really was cool, but Bolland himself decided to recolor it in 2008 with much more subdued, realistic tones. And different people like different things. This will give you both versions. John Higgins, thank you. Thank you, a bunch of people. Look at this. Stayed up till 1 a.m. UK time to catch a few minutes of the show. Oh, my God. Thanks, James. James Robinson also says, please back the GoFundMe if you can. But how is your shoulder? You haven't mentioned it in a while. You know what? After I got that cortisone shot, it basically went back to normal eventually. So, like, I have full flexibility that doesn't hurt. The only thing I can't do is I've always been sort of double jointed with my elbows. Like, see, with my left arm, if I want to, I can like just bend it right back. I can't do that with this arm. I can only get it about at the 90-degree angle. I can't make it go back like it used to. But it works. Thanks for asking. Thanks for the super chat. Thanks for staying up late. Let me tell you some other aspects of this. By the way, see this photo here where they've got the Joker card? That pushes in kind of like a photography clickable button. Like it goes up and down. Each volume will be offered through, this is crazy, a private acquisition and allocation process. So every sale is hand delivered, basically. Like they're going to walk you through the step. It's limited to 47 copies. And they say they will always only print 47 copies because 47 is the atomic number of silver, which argent, it's coming from the same Latin. Anyway, you can register to potentially be one of those 47 at argentcomics.com. Past that, I really don't know how they choose who's going to be allowed to buy this thing. Each copy, it is signed by Brian Bolland. At that point, it would be crazy if it didn't. I'm surprised that they don't give you like some of Alan Moore's personal warlock charms. Yeah, Mike, always good to see you, man. I like this. Who's Argent's target demographic? C. Montgomery Burns? I have never seen a presentation exactly like this. Geely prints, goatskin leather, a detachable magnifying glass lens on the front, only 47 copies. I just was like blown away by it. I've never seen anything like that. This is definitely catering to a very elite crowd. They said they'll always print 47 copies that they'll sell and 5 copies that they'll sort of keep as archive copies. Crazy. Just crazy. I wanted to share it, though, because isn't that pretty wild? I've never seen a comic treated like that. What's the most expensive, like, new comic book edition you can get? I would just think it would be like a big omnibus for like $100. Well, no, excuse me. Okay. Things like the Akira box set behind me and the Love and Rockets box set that was once gifted to me, those can be a little over $200, I guess. But we're not talking like, I can't think of a new comic that might be like $1,000, but something like this easily could be. Yeah, artist editions are about as expensive as it gets, but even then, those aren't those between like 75 to 150? I guess I don't really specialize in that area, so I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, I don't know. This is being done. I think the company is in Europe, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to be following them because that is just some wild shit. All right, we'll keep going. DC stuff. MegaCon was just over a week ago now. but I'm just coming up across some of this news. Jim Lee, obviously, the publisher and president and stuff there. He said that they have no plans to do another Milestone initiative. Now, they only did one of those. It was in 2021, but it got a lot of acclaim. It was a program to find and educate and train Black voices for comics, like maybe the next generation of big creators. So it was a really cool program. People have been wondering if they would ever do one again, but Jim Lee says probably not. There's a reason for that. He says, I don't know if we'll do another Milestone initiative. We had an outside sponsor that came in and bankrolled that whole initiative. I think we brought in 20 different creators from around the country. Close. They did 24. The sponsor was Ally Financial, who's a fine enough bank, although I think they sort of specialize in people with sort of challenged credit. Anyway, they underwrote DC's Milestone initiative. They funded stuff like travel, training, housing, all sorts of stuff for like remote and on-site events at DC's California offices. Anyway, another quote from Jim. It was really cool. It was done in coordination with sponsorship because those kinds of things cost a lot of money. Out of that, we got some really good creatives that are still working for us today. I think it was a cool thing to do. It was successful. The initiative, for the record, it trained 12 writers, 12 artists. I would say the biggest visible name out of that whole bunch, probably Morgan Hampton. He's currently writing Green Lantern Corps. So, a couple people broke in, but I would say that Morgan Hampton probably the most successful of the class, we'll call it. I like the idea, but I get how it could be expensive. Anyway, apparently DC doesn't have any plans. They'd basically need a sponsor to come in and do that again. Oh, Marvel and DC cooperation stuff or collaboration stuff. Beyond the Batman, Deadpool, the Spider-Man, Superman crossovers, those have been the most obvious ones because they're for sale in our comic shops. But DC and Marvel have also each been publishing digital comic crossovers. They're working with each other there. For instance, DC published a Flash Fantastic Four comic. Marvel published a Thor Shazam crossover. But there's another one that they're going to do. DC plans to publish a Supergirl Blade crossover on DC Infinite Universe. That's their online, their own personal platform for digital comics. Obviously, they sell them other places. But I thought that was interesting. Supergirl Blade is who they chose. Maybe they just have a good story, but it also kind of makes me curious. I mean, anyway, related to that, in September, DC also announced this week that they're going to publish their side of the crossovers, including the digital comics, in a print collection. They're calling it the Cosmic Kiss Caper and Other Stories. So they're putting out a print edition of all of the crossover stuff they've done so far. I can only assume Marvel has similar plans, but Marvel actually hasn't announced something like that yet. No, exactly right. Not an obvious pairing. If it's story-wise, I can only guess it has something to do with the sun, right? I mean, I was making a joke at the front. Supergirl's powered by the sun. Blade, not necessarily weakened by the sun, but certainly his enemies are. He fights at night. So there's sort of opposites there, but I wonder if it's more. Because, I mean, this is just my speculation, but the inclusion of Blade specifically, as compared to any other sort of evening-based night fighter like Moon Knight or something. Supergirl's getting a movie this summer. Could this be any indication that Marvel wants to use that character because they're finally moving forward with that movie? It's pretty big speculation, I will admit. I don't think that this is any evidence to that. It just makes me wonder. It's wild to me that I want to say it's been close to 10 years since they announced Mahershala Ali would be Blade, and then they just can't seem to get a script and a director that everybody's happy with. I don't know. It was only kind of meh. I haven't read any of the digital crossovers, I have to say. Would a vampire vaporize from the inside out if it drank yellow, sun-powered kryptonite blood? I feel like no, if I was writing it, because everybody that has blood absorbs the sun and gets energy from it. Kryptonians, I guess, have supercells that really store that energy and can transform it somehow. But I'm pretty sure that there has to have been at least one story where a vampire bites Superman or Superboy. There has to be. I know that I can think of an Art Adams drawn annual where Batman and Superman went up against vampires. Superman canonically has weakness to the supernatural and magic. I don't think it would kill a vampire to drink their blood. I feel like it should actually like supercharge them in a way, you know, that's how it should be sort of safe for them to get that energy. I don't know. The fangs like should break, right? But again, if you can write that they're sort of supernatural or magic or something like that, and I don't know. X-Men versus Dracula, that was the one where Dracula bit Storm and temporarily transformed her into like one of his brides. Am I remembering that right? That was, I want to say, early 80s. And I read it, but it's been a long time since I read that. There was an era, though, where Marvel really treated Dracula as one of their main villains, and he was just terrifying, actually. Like, Dracula in the Marvel universe was a very successful villain that no one could ever really beat. They just sort of temporarily slowed down. There were vampires in the Midnight Suns game. Wait a minute, wasn't there just DC versus vampires? I didn't read anything from that event, but did anybody? Like, I would think that they had to address vampires versus Kryptonians. All right, I've got other news. Like this, which surprised me a little, but I guess it makes sense, is Greg Capullo, obviously a huge name in comics, worked for Marvel, DC, Image, all of them. Apparently, he's considering retiring from doing interior work and only doing covers. I mean, good work if you can get it, so I sort of get that, but yeah. At MegaCon, Capullo said, quote, "I'm kind of feeling like I'm going to be done doing interiors. I have reasons for that. I can give them to you. You look at the clock. I don't want to bring it all down here, but I'm going to be 64 this month. Jesus Christ, right? I've seen a lot of people die earlier. I really love my wife, and I've spent so much time just sitting at that table working. I want to spend a lot more time with my wife. She's great." It's a fair concern. I mean, I will say, first of all, though, Greg Capullo looks to be one of the healthier guys in comics. He obviously exercises and works out compared to plenty of artists that become sedentary. I recently lost my art team, my longtime art team. One guy I won't even discuss, but Jonathan Glapian, my friend, has gone on to become his own artist. He did a lot of inking. He was basically the inker for Greg Capullo since maybe like 2009 or so. I'm very proud of him. He's working under McFarlane. He's got his own thing going. Okay. The person he won't mention, we already know this because it was news a couple years ago now. It was colorist FCO Placencia, who had been Capullo's primary colorist since 2009. But then Capullo kind of... he posted, on social media that he won't work with him anymore. It was halfway through Wolverine Revenge, which he did with Jonathan Hickman. Just said that FCO wasn't hitting deadlines. I mean, if that's true, but yeah. I think a lot of artists, when you really look at it, you see that I think every artist draws themselves into their art on a certain level. Sometimes it becomes a little more obvious, but it's what we see the most, I think. So if somebody has a particular ear or nose or eye, they're going to sort of work that into a lot of their artwork, just because it's what you see and what you can know. Yeah. Yeah, if Capullo decides that he wants to transition to, basically doing covers, maybe like the occasional small story for something big, I'd get it. He's certainly had at this point a very successful career. Personally, I remember discovering him on Quasar, of all books, written by Mark Grunwald at that point, and I was really into it. His style definitely shifted quite a bit from, he started on Marvel on Quasar, then X-Force, and then Todd McFarlane picked him up to work on Spawn, and he was allowed to sort of go a little more cartoony and stuff. But I really loved that early era. There was just something very gentle but precise about his line work that I loved on books like Quasar and X-Force. Really loved it. Oh, look at this. Jimmy Jams, Jim Mafood dropping a note. Note to Capullo, I will ink your next series. Let's go, man. That would be an interesting pairing, Jim. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see something like that. I think that Capullo has such a cool structure, but he has allowed himself to exaggerate in a really positive way. And it would be really interesting to see somebody that works with so many mixed media tools as yourself go nuts on that form. That would be really cool to see. Yeah. So Quasar was great. Capullo was super delicate on it. I loved it. Continuing. Kind of a quick tidbit here, but I like knowing where this is going. Writer Philip Kennedy Johnson, artist Nic Klein, they started a Hulk run where it's all about Hulk versus monsters, or at least initially it was. That sort of restarted as a renamed title called Infernal Hulk because this ancient evil has taken possession of Hulk's body. It's sort of the second chapter of this story that they've got planned on. And we were told once the second chapter started that there's going to be a third chapter that sort of wraps up their whole arc, which I kind of love when there's a planned beginning, middle, end, even for serialized superheroes. That's going to be called Hulk War. Now, this past week, Nic Klein explained why the Hulk book has had all these fill-in artists like Adam Gorham and Kev Walker. He posted, quote, "The reason why I'm absent from Infernal Hulk in the later issues is because I'm getting a head start drawing Hulk War in its entirety. My apologies." Personally, I think no apologies necessary. I think that's a fantastic explanation for what's been going on. It's been something that I've been talking about because I've been reading this Hulk, doing reviews with you, mini reviews when it comes out. And I like the story. I haven't always been excited by the guest artists because Nic Klein just has a very unique, great, detailed look. And there's not really that many artists that you could say have a similar aesthetic. So it can be a bit jarring to expect to read Nic Klein and get somebody else. But if he's doing it so that he can do this whole arc, I can live with that. And honestly, that resets my expectations and makes me more interested in not bailing on it. Would I prefer that he draws everything and it takes its time? Yeah. At Marvel and DC, that's pretty much not going to happen. Minus one or two creators that breathe rarefied air. Unless you're Jim Lee, the book is going to come out monthly. Nic Klein is incredible. Just incredible. Yeah. He's something special, and I'm really excited at some point to see him go nuts on his own ideas. I would really like to see something like that because he sees things differently. I like it a lot. I really do. Nick is a beast, and I can't wait to see the work. I'd love him to do all of it, but if he's sort of leaving most of this middle chapter so that he can do the whole final chapter, I kind of am okay with that. That sounds like a strong conclusion to a story arc, and I can deal with it. I like knowing that. Infernal Hulk that's going on right now is going to be 10 issues. Then they said that there's going to be sort of a 4-part interlude just before Hulk War, which is by Nic Klein. Yeah. Certain artists like really raise your expectations, and it's hard to find a fill-in artist that you're also happy with. I will say I was happy with the first part of Hulk. The fill-in artist was almost always Danny Earls. Not quite the same as Nic Klein at all, but does do a lot of the moody shading, certainly does his own version of a lot of intricate detail, and I was very satisfied with that. But some of the other artists are very different, and yeah. I think it sounds cool. All right, what else? I'm wiggling around too much, sorry. Marvel released this image that you see on the right. That's a cover for Reborn Ultimate Impact. It obviously shows Miles Morales holding the origin boxes that he brought from the Ultimate Universe, and it hints at who these new characters are. If you read comics, what I just said makes sense. If you're not up to date, that probably sounded like a whole lot of nonsense. Kind of love that about comics. If you don't read them, you're like, what the fuck? I understood all those words, but that made no sense to me. The Miles Morales Spider-Man went to another universe and brought back literal boxes that contain certain superhero powers. And we didn't know whose superpowers or anything, but the cover indicates Wonder Man, Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, and Juggernaut. And we know that there are also 5 of them. So we can start putting together some of this to understand. We already knew that there's going to be a new second Wonder Man. We already knew that there's going to be a new villain from the Negative Zone. I love how crazy this is getting, trying to describe this. Holisticus. So, who else have we got? Well, Marvel just shared further variant covers for this with 2 new heroes, or at least superpowered beings, Sightseer and Mogul. And their backgrounds, I'm going to show you them because these are covers that they put out. They seem to imply they have the powers of Juggernaut and Doctor Strange. That would leave Captain Marvel and a 5th one. I don't know who Holisticus. Did he get Captain Marvel's Negaband powers? Did he get something else? I don't know. It's a 5-issue series. It is by Chris Condon and Stefano Caselli. Those are really good creators. Begins June 20th. Presumably, we'll get to know who the 5th character to get powers is at that point. But here are those covers. On the left is Sightseer. Definitely seems to be magic powers. It also, doesn't that look stunningly similar to the Kamala Khan Ms. Marvel? I mean, the red sash and the blue and gold along with it, it seems like very similar. I don't get that. This guy, Mogul, I mean, it says nothing can stop him now. That's definitely the outline of Juggernaut. This is the Crimson Bands of Kitterak. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. It would be kind of interesting if that meant that it depowers Juggernaut. There's only so much that one power can go to because it comes from sort of an otherworldly god. I don't know. Yes, synergy. It's a total coincidence that they've got a new Black Wonder Man. It really looks a lot like Ms. Marvel, except that it's definitely very pale colors here. I mean, could be like Southeastern Asian or something like that, but not, like Middle Eastern. I don't know. So some new superheroes that have versions of powers we've seen before. Weird. This was kind of cool to come across. It's on a lot of mainstream news sites, so I think it's pretty hard to ignore. I mean, technically, I guess it's a little spoilery, but I also feel like I don't know how you could miss this if you're in the comic sphere. Marvel hasn't said when Daredevil Born Again Season 3 will start. I mean, we're just in the middle, barely, of Season 2. But we've already seen Punisher in Season 1 and Jessica Jones in Season 2. This seems like the natural progression. This is a real photo that was taken on set this past week. There were multiple set photos in New York, and it includes not just Jessica Jones, Kristen Ritter, but Mike Coulter and Finn Jones. So it would seem almost impossible to argue that the Defenders aren't coming back. So their characters haven't all been seen together since 2017. 9 years ago was when the Defenders miniseries happened on Netflix. I'd say all of these actors have kept themselves in really good shape. I don't know if you saw the latest Daredevil. Charlie Cox has, a shirtless scene, and he's on that MCU diet of presumably nothing but like raw steroids. The dude is ripped, and I'm like, this is 10 years after he started playing Daredevil, but he looked incredible. No idea, by the way, what roles they would actually be playing in a season 3 of Daredevil. We don't really know what it's based on. But Luke Cage, it's not easy to see here because he's wearing a robe, but he's definitely in a brown and gold suit. In the comics, he becomes Mayor. So I would say that's a possibility. No word on Misty Knight or Colleen Wing. I say at this point, cool, keep Daredevil. Just create Heroes for Hire and put the rest of these put these 3 and Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, if you can get them, put those 5 on a team show where they're detectives, Heroes for Hire. I think it's interesting. A lot of people didn't think Finn Jones would be brought back. I don't think it's Finn Jones's fault that season 1 of Iron Fist was, so wobbly. I think he's capable. I think that the problem with season 1, especially if you read behind the scenes, they really rushed that show. So they had almost no time to do fight choreography. But if you stuck with it, I think most people would agree that season 2 was a big upgrade. They downplayed all the, Meacham villainous brother-sister stuff, and they gave a much bigger role to Jessica Hennick, who plays Colleen Wing. Did some interesting stuff with his history and powers. Actually gave him one of his iconic supervillains. It was a lot better, in my opinion. That would be interesting, Mike. Just the Defenders getting sued and Matt has to defend them in court. I would totally go for most of a season-long courtroom case. Defender's Defender. That would be really cool. Yeah, they left Luke Cage and Iron Fist both in sort of weird places where Iron Fist had given his powers to Colleen Wing, but he still could focus his chi, and he was using it with guns instead of fists. And then Luke Cage had taken over the criminal empire that, was it Black Mariah had left behind? Or I don't remember now. But yeah, they had left them both. But at this point, it's like I say, it's been almost 10 years. I think you can also sort of hand wave away stuff and just say yeah, I went through some stuff. This is where I am now. I think that you can easily reset things when there's that much time that has passed. That's interesting, Metal Elf, because I actually really liked that episode of the second season that had Iron Fist guest starring on Luke Cage and training him how to fight. I like that, but public defenders. I'd say it's got a lot of potential. Who knows if they'll execute it well? But it is interesting seeing the MCU just go, yeah, you know what? We're going to roll all that Netflix stuff in after all. And good for them. Good for them. It wasn't all perfect, but some of it was quite good. I thought all 3 seasons of Daredevil quite strong. I thought season 1 of Jessica Jones was absolutely fantastic. Season 1 of Luke Cage was pretty good. I mean, it had Mahershala Ali. He was really cool in it. Anyway, there was some good stuff in there. It wasn't all perfect. I think that I love John Bernthal as Punisher. I thought both seasons of his show were pretty dull. I wanted to like that, but I didn't. But they were fun, and clearly Marvel Studios is spending a little bit more than even Netflix did, I think. This is a collaboration story. So, Dark Horse Comics and Marvel are collaborating to publish Marvel's Mightiest Monsters. It's going to be a 416-page book, by the way. Yeah, let's say that number again. 416 pages, featuring sci-fi monster stories by Marvel creators like Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, his brother Larry Lieber, and Steve Ditko. You know, classic 1950s stuff. It includes the first appearances of a bunch of 1950s monsters that they ended up rolling into the superhero comics over a decade later. Groot, Fin Fang Foom, the Hulk villain Zemnu. Those were all cool. They all had crazy names like, I am Groom. I am Bar. Yeah, exactly, Kevin. The old Atlas monsters. It's really cool. It's also apparently going to have some of the later monster stuff by people like Chris Claremont, Sal Buscema, John Byrne, Gil Kane, Eric Powell, Trad Moore, very recent, Art Adams. They're going to include some essays from comics historians. Not me, just to be clear. I don't know if I even count as a historian. And original art by Jack Kirby. Burbo, Fart, Quart. Wait, Googam I think is real. I'm pretty sure that one's real, right? Comes out October 13th, $75. Big price tag. At the same time, it's over 400 pages. That is humongous. 400 pages. Marvel will frequently team with both Dark Horse and Fantagraphics. I think they've also teamed with IDW for things like Artist Edition or like library omnibuses of stuff that they're just not keeping in print. Yeah, they'll license it probably very affordably because the benefit to them is it keeps their trademarks active. They just take probably a fee of some sort, but the publisher most likely gets the profits, or at least most of them. Dark Horse and Image have some cool characters that could definitely cross over. Yeah, 75 is worth it. And Abrams, of course, is publishing things like John Byrne's X-Men fanfic, Elsewhen. So, yeah, Marvel does collaborate with other publishers to let them publish some of their archival material or their artist edition stuff. I'm sure that they're working with Image Comics because Skybound is now doing some artist editions. So it's pretty cool. I think that this seems like a fun book. 75 is a good chunk of change, but I also think that that's a lot of creators that I like, and I love the theme. I love the theme that we're just going to go monsters. So I thought I'd put it in front of people. And it comes out just before Halloween, so that's good. That's good timing. Dead Mall. Anybody remember that comic? Speaking of Dark Horse. Well, there's a production company called Not the Funeral Home But they have optioned the Adam Caesar and artist Dave Stoll 4-issue series Dead Mall. So they want to make a movie based on this. Dark Horse published the comic, and then more recently the trade paperback, 2023, so not that long ago. According to Variety, the description is, Dead Mall follows 5 teens who sneak into their local mall for one last look before it's demolished, only to discover the mall is far from abandoned. Inside the crumbling retail labyrinth, they encounter a sprawling, ever-changing cosmic horror that has made the mall its home, transforming the familiar consumer temple into a nightmarish maze where survival is anything but guaranteed. I don't know exactly why, but malls really do have a bit of history with horror. I think that there's a few exceptional horror movies and a few cheesy schlock things that have used the mall as an interesting setting. Certainly, Dawn of the Dead would have to be the most iconic representation of the mindlessness of consumer culture. You know, people holing up in a mall to escape zombies. But, you know, even schlock like Chopping Mall has its place. So, yeah. You know, back in the day, when it was first coming out, I read some of Resident Alien. I remember that I liked it. I didn't stick with it. I don't remember it well. I don't have cable, so I haven't seen the show. I love how many of you leapt to Chopping Mall. Well, maybe someday Jim and I will have to cover that one on Trash Movie Bonanza. It's not great. It's not great. I think you'll like the next episode that we've recorded and our editor Jamie is working on. I think it's pretty funny, the stuff we talk about. I'll just say there's probably no movie out there that has more rocket launchers. It's a movie with tons of rocket launchers. I don't know if that will give it away or just be utterly confusing, but we recorded a movie. Yeah. Anyway, Caesar, if you also wrote the Clown in a Cornfield novels that I guess were turned into a relatively successful horror movie last year by Eli Roth. I didn't see that one. I do find usually Eli Roth stuff is a little too nihilistic for me to enjoy, except for Thanksgiving, because that was kind of pulpy and schlocky, so I could kind of deal with that one. Nice. You are in the right place then. You are in the right place. This guy has Chopping Mall on Blu-ray. You're in the right place. It was downright adequate. You know what? That's high praise for some horror. All right. A little bit of what could have been. We're going to talk a little bit about Ninja Turtles. I'm going to show you a little footage here. Hold on. Where's the play button? There it is. Okay. So from March 13th through 26th, theaters were showing Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze because it was the 35th anniversary. Fair enough. Before it played, they had a 10-minute featurette, which mostly had co-creator Kevin Eastman talking about the Ninja Turtles and drawing. And while he did that, it intercuts with what you're seeing here. There's a lot more, obviously. There's like a 10-minute documentary. I'm just showing you a few little bit of it. But it's live action footage that Paramount apparently shot as a proof of concept because they were very close to pulling the trigger to do a live action movie based on The Last Ronin. And by all accounts, they were going to have the Turtles look very much like they looked in the original live action movies. Resident Alien is great. Really interesting. Anyway, the movie has been canceled, so this is likely the only time fans will get to see what could have been. You know, it's clear that it's test footage because it's, you know, only got the one set and they put the turtle in a ninja hoodie and mask so that they don't have to like, hire the Jim Henson company to do animatronics. But I do have to say it kind of hits me in the right place. Maybe it's just because I grew up with the Ninja Turtles, but I wish that they had made a live action Last Ronin movie. And apparently, we talked about this in the news a few weeks ago. They'd even approached actress Judith Hoag, the original live action April O'Neil, to play April in Last Ronin, where she's older. So could have been cool, but Paramount has massively scaled back their Ninja Turtles plans. They're really focusing on their 2 or 3 brands that absolutely are guaranteed hits, like I want to say Paw Patrol. They're really scaling back on even like on Ninja Turtles, Star Trek. I think even Dora the Explorer is something that they might own that they're scaling back on. So it's kind of a surprise, but yeah. I would totally go for a Last Ronin animated film with the right animation company on it. That could be a lot of fun. Damn you for putting that in my head. That is not something I need. Exactly. It could still happen, and part of that, like, it could still happen is why I'm even including it in the news. It keeps us thinking about it, keeps us talking about it. It might maintain or grow some interest. People have to talk about it to let Paramount know that there's an audience for this. They were working on a Last Ronin game, and I'm not sure if that also got canceled or not. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd take Jack Black in just about anything. He's great. Yeah. All right, what else have I got? Oh. Bodega. Let's talk about this. I think this is super exciting, but I'm also into sort of smaller comic festivals, small press stuff. This is right up my alley. So, listen to this. Bodega. It stands for the Brooklyn Organization Dedicated to the Endurance of the Graphic Arts. That is a new nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting and sustaining comic and graphic arts in Brooklyn and the greater New York area. It's going to host the inaugural Brooklyn Expo of Comics, BEC. It's going to be a 2-day festival in the Williamsburg part of Brooklyn this November, mid-November. That's awesome. Bryce Gold was the head of content at Comixology for a while. He was briefly the head of comics at Kickstarter. He's going to serve as the executive director here. He's got comics experience. James Tynion will chair the board of directors. And this organization also got its start with apparently a big donation from James. So he's definitely a guy that got the ball rolling on this. The goal of this organization, per the release, is to spotlight comics talent from New York and around the world while generating appreciation for independent comics and zines. Love conventions like that. SPX, MoCA, Ape, Space. Love those conventions. Those are some of my favorites. Paramount willing to spend a stupid amount of money on WB. Yup. But not doing a hugely popular TMNT adaptation. It doesn't make sense to me. Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at? What about Queens? Anyway, applications to table at the event, and I think that they only have around space for like 100 tables. So it's not designed to be on the scale or scope of a New York Comic-Con or a San Diego Comic-Con. It's in Brooklyn, not in Manhattan. But it does sound really cool. So if you are somewhat local there, or if you are more into the indie comics scene, might be something you're interested in either attending or submitting to. I believe that they're going to have one award and one like convention booklet that they'll put together with art from participants. Sounds cool to me. Sounds really cool to me. I like the promo art by Kenny Roten. I think that the fact that the logo and the name just, I don't know, it's very clever. I think it's very appropriate. It sounds really cool to me. But I've also had some of my best comic experiences at small press expos. Just love the passion on display there. I think you find a lot of really funny stuff. I think you find a lot of really personal stuff. Sometimes you get a little burned out on superheroes, and the small press is where you can find biographies, crime, sci-fi or surreal stories, and lots of humorous stuff. And I like it. So I definitely wanted to talk about it. I also have a lot of faith in James Tynion. You know, he's got some connections. He's doing very, very well. I like that he isn't just sort of, all I'm going to do is like movies based on my stuff. No, he's investing back into the community with this. That says a lot to me. That says a lot. All right. I've got a few more pieces of news, not a whole lot. Don't really have any new Diamond news. They seem to have flickered out. Sorry. Yeah, let's talk about Steve Bissette a little bit. God, he's amazing. So, Vermont's 6th cartoonist laureate, I stuttered over that one, cartoonist laureate was recently announced as Steve Bissette. We've talked about that. In an interview he did with a local newspaper, Valley News, he said his one condition on accepting the position was that he wanted to also get help to get a grant so that he could make a comic book about the history of Vermont cartoonists. I love it. I love how personal and specific that is. That's really cool. His appointment is going to take place this week, April 9th. And then there's going to be a celebration 2 days later. So if you're in the Vermont area, you know, putting this on your radar, the Springfield Cinemas 3 is going to show the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves based on Constantine, the character that Bissette co-created on his run of Swamp Thing with Alan Moore. Also, regarding this art that you see to the left, currently the Kickstarter for his self-published comic Tyrant is being put together in a deluxe edition that is already at about $250,000. Incredible. Huge success for an independent comic. Really, really impressive. That has 9 days left as of when this is airing live. And publisher Chris Stevens gave a comment to Bleeding Cool that the goal was to help give Bissette a nest egg. And according to Stevens, Bissette is warming to the idea of continuing this comic. Now, the goal, Bissette originally said his goal was to do 50 issues following the life of a dinosaur. He only did 4. But that would be really, really cool. That would be really, really cool. I couldn't tell you who's from which state. Sorry. Yeah, I liked the movie too. I thought, you know, Keanu Reeves played it very differently than in the sense of like how he looked, but he played it like a bastard that like messes with dark forces, but definitely knows his stuff. I thought that the movie was very, very appropriate for the comic character. I really liked that movie, actually. I thought it was visually interesting. I thought it had good supporting characters, good villainous plot with betrayals, and I thought the ways that Constantine, as they call him in the movie, the ways he would use magic was interesting and cool. I liked it. I do. It isn't completely comics accurate because he isn't British and blonde, but aside from that, I felt like it was pretty authentic. Yeah, loved the final scene with Satan. Loved it. I won't give it away if you haven't seen it, but and who's the actress? She's incredible. As far as like, you know, comic book fans would know her from. She also played Black Widow's mom in the Black Widow movie. What's that actress's name? Rachel Weisz. Rachel Weisz. She's always good, but she was really interesting in that, playing actually a dual role now that I think of it. Tilda Swinton was in it. Tilda Swinton is that was the first time I really took notice of Tilda Swinton, and she's been just incredible in anything I've ever seen her in. Was it Suspiria with Tilda Swinton? The remake of, yes, Tilda Swinton in Suspiria. If you're into horror, watch the 2018 Suspiria remake. It's different than the original. It's the same idea, but it is different, and it's fantastic. So yeah, two great actresses in that movie, Rachel Weisz and Tilda Swinton, that both had interesting things to do. That's really cool that you got to meet him. He was on Jim Mahfood and Sean Crystal's Ink Pulp, and I was watching it live and putting in a few comments, and he kept answering the questions, which flattered me because it meant he was like paying attention to the audience while being interviewed, and it was flattering to get my questions and comments answered, because I do admire him quite a bit. I didn't know what I would do with an interview with him. Maybe I could have. I just was like, I don't know if I can do it. Oh, I would love it if more states had the Cartoonist Laureate program. Kudos to Vermont. They've already had such fantastic people in it. Rick Geary. Rick Geary is from New Mexico, is he? I didn't know that. But there's so many people that I would love to see get a little bit more attention, or just have a platform that they could say, hey, I'm the Cartoonist Laureate. I'm going to do a speech at, XYZ school or library. I think that would be really, really cool to have more. Rick Geary is an amazing talent. That's interesting. All right. Sorry, I got a little distracted talking about the movie Constantine. Folks, we've had blind bags recently. I got a Daredevil blind bag. What's behind the protective cover? I'll let you know in a little bit. But what if there was a blind pizza box? Well, May 6th, Bad Idea is launching a blind pizza box comic. The comic is Hank Howard, Pizza Detective. It's by Robert Venditti and David Lapham. So I'm like, well, those are some pretty amazing creators that have actually both written some interesting crime type stuff. I mean, Venditti right now on Ordained, but he's also done superhero stuff. Lapham, I mean, Stray Bullets is kind of the gold standard as far as crime comic books go in my book. But yeah, this is a guy that solves pizza related crimes. He's like the Ace Ventura of the pizza world. Anyway, Lapham designed the pizza box here, which I guess is based on something that's, a store that's in the comic. And inside, you'll get a comic that it has either a cheese or pepperoni design. So it's a blind box with two options. Very crazy, but that is definitely the kind of thing Bad Idea does. If it's something you're interested in, I would let your comic book shop know, because I don't know how many of them want to order this big, chunky, weird thing. But it is kind of funny. Authentic Big Caligula's pizza box with exclusive comic inside. I don't think that there's any actual pizza inside. No, sorry. The Noid. We all remember the Noid, right? As somebody that enjoys claymation, I did find the Noid entertaining. But if you read the history of what happened with that mascot, you understand why Domino's had to all of a sudden just end using the Noid. It's just dark. It's some dark real life history. There must be a Netflix true crime documentary about it. But anyway, it's a pretty clever name. rub a real cheese pizza slice on the box to get a peek inside. Yeah, turn the cardboard invisible. Turn the cardboard. Anyway, pretty silly. Thought it would be fun to share. One last piece of news. Really just putting this on people's radar, but Hollywood Reporter has an interesting article this week commenting on how comics currently are shifting the focus back to the superstar artist. Like the focus is definitely on the artist over the writer again. It discusses how in the past, we've had writers like the Alan Moore, Grant Morrison era. We had Brian Michael Bendis, Robert Kirkman, Brian K. Vaughan, the list goes on. They were the ones driving the show. And they're still like big names that can like draw in a lot of an audience. But it's been a kind of a long time since the early 90s when all the Image Comics guys, the Jim Lees and the Todd McFarlanes were like the thing in comics. It's been writers as sort of the driving force, it seems, on projects over the artist for several decades. But we are kind of back at a point where people are more excited about the artist and the art. It's always a balance, but it is an interesting point. Other big names in the article that they mention, keep in mind, mainstream article, Hollywood Reporter, shout out to like non-comics readers, but it mentions Hayden Sherman, Jorge Jimenez, Peach Momoko, and I'm like, yeah, these people deserve their flowers. The article discusses the lines to get signatures. It discusses the sales, especially on like DC's Absolute books. It discusses the prices that some of these people's original art is going for. I think it's a net good thing for comics. I think it's high time artists became a little bit more the talk of the industry because, yeah, you don't have a story without a writer. You don't. But the first thing you notice are the visuals. It's a visual medium. And you could get through a bad story with good art a lot easier, in my opinion, than a great story with terrible art. I've always felt that way. I respect everybody that works on comics, every single role, but it is a visual medium. And I think that it makes sense for the artists to be the superstars. There was also a kind of similar vein. Comics Beat this week had a really cool article, an in-depth look at what they sort of call the indie artists, but they really focus on Jim Mahfood and Jesse Lonergan, who I don't think I need to tell you, two artists that I absolutely love. So yeah, just nice to see articles about the artists popping up this week. So yeah. The story definitely keeps you there. My point is, if you were just looking at a single comic and the art was just atrocious, you're probably not even going to finish it because it won't make sense. But if it at least looks cool, well, then at least it looks cool. You might not get a story out of it, but at least it looks cool. That's my only point. But you're right. Good story is how you keep somebody's attention and invest them. Well, that was the news of the week that I had. That was all I had. Not as much as some weeks, but that's okay because we're going to do some comic book reviews as the next thing. So let's transition into another segment. Let me get that set up.
Let's review.
Review it.
The review.
The reviews are in. I repeat, the reviews are in.
Go to your reviews.
What?
Speaking of bad reviews.
Don't worry about that review.
Let's review all the facts.
All right, gentlemen, let's review.
Before we do, let's review.
Those reviews really came out fast.
Maybe we can review some right now?
I'm not going to review all that again.
Now let's review.
Not my worst review.
Let's review, shall we? To review.
I think I've reviewed about as much as I can.
Okay. Got a little glare. Where's that coming from? Well, I've got it on my head too, don't I? Well, maybe next time I won't have the main light on. I'll start with a book I absolutely love this week. It gets a very strong recommendation from me. I'll tell you that right up front. He was my guest, or guests, I should say, last week. They were my guests for a reason. Royals is a really cool comic written by Derek Kirkham, art by Jacob Perez. And if you didn't see last week or you didn't pick it up, the general gist is that there are two brothers, okay? And they're psychic. Not psychic in the sense that they can read other people's minds or anything like that. All they can do is talk to each other like that. So they quietly can have conversations. They figured out what they're going to do with this is they're going to hustle big stakes poker games. Castor will play poker. Paul will go to watch the match on TV where they show everybody's hands and they just can communicate. It seems like, okay, it's a hustle, but, it's a hustle that nobody should be able to figure out, except they're playing against a Korean mob boss. They're in Seoul. These guys are American, but they're in Seoul, South Korea for this tournament. And then there's a storm that knocks the power out. So now the game is going on, but it's not being broadcast. Obviously, so Paul can't see what's going on. That's the mechanism that gets things going. But what keeps it interesting is the character work. These guys are brothers, but you can tell that Castor he really gets on Paul's nerves. Like, they love each other, they're brothers, they work together, but they're very different. The Castor is always like, hitting on women and just all about like making as much money as they can without thinking about what the consequences could be. And Paul's just nervous that they've maybe gone too far, like gone too big. Like, they should keep it quieter and small. Great artwork, great character work, very easy to read page by page and panel by panel, which is impressive because Jacob has actually never drawn a comic book before. He's done some storyboards and animation, mostly character design. He said, I loved some of these characters. This guy, Alex, is just this obnoxious little henchman to the main boss. He's interesting. I wouldn't have thought it would be interesting, but there's a priest that Paul has an extended conversation with, and it's surprisingly interesting. I guess it just gets us into Paul's head a little bit more and helps establish what the stakes truly are. There's a lot of levels that this story is operating on at once. So anyway, really great character work, really great animated expressions and gesture. I loved this book. I loved it. And I had the advantage of getting to read two issues before because I was going to interview them. And so it all blended together. I will say one thing I didn't really pick up on until I sat down and read this print copy is that the second issue starts getting a lot more action packed, and that had really blended together for me. So you may not pick up on this, but this is like a pilot episode, I'll say, of TV. It has to establish the characters, the setting, the stakes, and things get bad for these guys. But issue 2 starts getting like really dangerous, moves really fast, gets really funny. This is like that, but on a smaller level. I strongly recommend it, folks. It's a fun book. That said, look, I'm poised to like something like this because I do enjoy crime comics. I've talked about loving Criminal. I just talked earlier during the news about how much David Lapham's Stray Bullets is one of my favorites. So Royals is essentially a crime book. It's up my alley. But this, I will say issue 1 gets like 2.5 out of 3 thumbs from me. And issue 2 is, I'm just telling you now, it gets 3 thumbs. That's my scale, is you can get up to 3 thumbs. I don't think anybody did rig it necessarily. I think it was bad luck. Anyway, strong recommend. We got something very unique this week, which is a new issue of Mad. Mad magazine comes out very irregularly right now. This is guest edited by Chip Zdarsky. Pretty funny guy. Pretty damn funny guy. And he has absolutely stacked this issue of Mad with some of the top talent in comics, as well as a few comedians in TV and movies. And it's all making fun of DC stuff. So your enjoyment probably is going to be tied to how much you care about DC characters. But with that said, the talent on display is just absolutely insane, and it really makes me laugh. Some of these things are fantastic. This, we've got Teenie Howard, we've got Mark Waid and Ty Templeton, Jim Zub. Oh, look at this. This feels like a very classic Mad magazine thing. It's making fun of people that fan cast movies. And the art by Kagan McLeod really reminds me of 80s and 90s Mad magazine artists. Dave Johnson. I mean, just incredible. One of my favorites is this, just Superman talking about his origins, like poking fun at it. Written by Jerry Duggan, who can frequently be very funny. He's done some podcasts with guys like Patton Oswalt and Brian Posehn, as well as worked with them on comics. And they're friends with my buddy, Tony Moore. I think Tony just knocked it out of the park here. But Tony is an artist who was very influenced by Mad magazine guys like Jack Davis. Loved it. Anyway, some of this stuff is like, jokes about DC history. Do you guys remember Death in the Family? Jim Aparo and who was the writer? Jim Aparo was Jim Starlin was the writer of that, with Jim Aparo on art. Death in the Family. Fans could vote on whether Robin would live or die. Obviously, Jason Todd has since been brought back to life. So they've got this thing where he's saying you can call to apologize or he'll hunt you down. I hope he doesn't remember me. Kyle Starks is great. A riff on Dial H for Heroes that just lets him create all sorts of terrible superheroes. Sweatpants Master. The Man with an Infant Gun. Tons of different types of art and jokes, but I thought this. Oh, look! I mean, they got Sergio Aragones to come in and do some of his classic silent 3-panel strips, just about comic book stores and stuff. Some of the best stuff in there. Unfortunately, a lot of Mad magazine artists just aren't around anymore. That's just the sad truth. They were kind of getting fairly old by like the 90s, the people that had stuck around since maybe the 50s and 60s. Honestly, aside from Sergio, I'm a little stumped to think of which classic Mad artists might even still be around, because they do a Spy versus Spy, but I don't think that guy's around anymore. They do one, what was it called, like Snappy Retorts. That was a recurring bit that they had in Mad magazine. But I think this is like honestly returning to what Mad magazine was. Mad at first was a comic book magazine by comic book artists, and it would parody superhero stuff. I mean, Super Duper Man was one of their first comics that was in Mad, and that was by Wally Wood. Just fantastic. But just a murderer's row of talent. Almost anyone you can think of is in this. Really impressive. Not every joke hit the same for me, but a lot of them were way up there. This one's written by Scott Aukerman. Comedy Bang Bang. Comedy Bang Bang. With Mitch Gerard's on art. That's fun. Seth Meyers. Late Night with Seth Meyers. He wrote one of these. So there's some people that are outside of comics too that have things to say. I like this joke about Power Girl action figure with art by a guy I really like, Isaac Goodhart. Written by Leah Williams, by the way. You could either have an optional modesty curtain for Power Girl or have her yabos fully out. Look, I'm not going to show you absolutely everything, but do I recommend it? I think it's a great value. I think it's $8, but I think that the talent in it is incredible. Do the fold-in. I don't want to ruin my copy, but they do have a fold-in. They do have a fold-in. Let's see. Ryan Brown did the art. Al Jaffe unfortunately passed away a year or two ago. But I don't want to give away the joke because, yeah, but it's a pretty good joke. It's a pretty good joke. Super strong recommend. I'd give this at least 2, maybe 2.5 thumbs. Super strong recommend. I picked up one of the blind bags for Daredevil. So I don't have it in its plastic case, but one thing I kind of appreciated was once you open it, it's got this just sort of cardstock protective coating. This thing here, just to protect it. So I think that they did a much better job on this blind bag than whatever that first one was, where like all of the covers got creased. I got the Peach Momoko cover. I'm very, very happy with that. Peach is incredible. Peach is just really, really unique and special. And love the colors. I love the motion to this. I love that there's just a nice flow of the shapes. It even like really mixes in sort of how the title goes across, and then she just, boom, transitions it all the way across. A nice S type shape, or Z shape, really. Z shape. But then the issue itself, I was into. I haven't read Daredevil in a little while. Fortunately, this is a good jumping on point. Stephanie Phillips is writing. A guy named Lee Garbett is the artist. I don't think I've read anything by Lee Garbett before. It's solid. It's better than solid. It's really engaging. And it repositions things, resets by having Matt Murdock take a new job as a professor, a law professor at Empire State University. I kind of like this idea. Talking to students about things like, what a deal is, what the actual fundamental elements are, talking about technology and its place in, the classroom as well as in deals, like actual technology. They introduce, I think, a new character, just a detective, a homicide detective, who's a bit of a jerk, but he's smart. Anyway, no Foggy Nelson or any other like real supporting characters that I recognize, like, Kingpin or Bullseye, but there's a new villain, a new status quo, and I thought it was really easy to just jump in and enjoy it for what it was. What would I give it? I'd probably give it like somewhere between 1.5 to 2 thumbs. So it's not something that I enjoyed quite as much as these two, but I found it interesting, and there's a chance I'll pick up issue 2 at this point because I did like it. I didn't find really anything to complain about. Certainly the art is perfectly in keeping with what Daredevil is, a little bit dark, a little bit grounded, feels authentic to New York City. I like the place that this is starting at for where Daredevil is. I appreciated that it wasn't just full of too much continuity that it just lost me. So I do hope that it gets into Daredevil going after, really basic street crime, arms and drugs, things like that. I think that's where Daredevil tends to work best, is when he's working to track down things that otherwise are slipping through the cracks. Yeah. Beowulf, yeah, it is really good. It's deceptively simple. I think it's deceptively simple, but she's really put a lot of thought into it. Even just the fact that these sort of leaves that are going through the air, these blood-covered leaves, she could have put them everywhere. She definitely put them on the left and left the right-hand side with some negative space. But I think it creates a very pleasant composition where, because these two have a bit of a contrast, I really focus in the middle. I really focus on what divides them, which is where you put in the character. It's a strong choice compositionally. What else did I read this week? I guess just 3 other things. Yeah, I don't know. I got the foil cover because my comic shop is very fair with the prices. They don't really overcharge for stuff like that. They just put it at cover price. So sometimes I'll do that. But the Matt Fraction Batman book is interesting. Absolute Batman is sucking a lot of the air out of the room when it comes to talking about Batman. But the mainstream Batman title is rock solid, better than rock solid. It's really got good mystery, a great mix of some new characters, and a cool way of looking at action. I think that Matt Fraction's doing a fantastic job making this version of Batman still very relatable by making him just somebody that legit cares. And this one is sort of divided into 3 stories. We've got a very small subplot about a kid who had witnessed the police committing a crime. We've got the police commissioner, Vandal Savage, meeting with Gotham's new mayor, Poison Ivy. Gotham is a crazy place, isn't it? But just lean into it. And then Batman actually just having a conversation, a very normal conversation over coffee with Alan Scott, the first Green Lantern, because he's the guy that knows Vandal Savage best. Get some insight into this enemy that's in a position of power. I like the idea that the people in positions of power right now are supervillains. It feels like in a different era that would be too over the top to have Vandal Savage as commissioner and Poison Ivy able to convince people to vote for her. But then I look at some of the real life leaders in this world and where we're at, and I go, yeah, with the right people behind you, I think you can get elected. I think it feels real. And by putting those positions of power under villains, it means that even though Batman's this super smart detective, best martial artist, rich beyond all measure, he still doesn't have the upper hand per se, because he isn't willing to completely destroy the status quo. That's not his role. His role on just the highest level you can get is that he's an agent of order. He works outside of the system, right? But he does it because the police can't handle everything, can they? Anyway, it's a guest artist in this, by the way, Ryan Sook. But Ryan Sook is a fantastic artist. Really, really good. Just recently did the Black Canary miniseries where she's having an MMA match against Lady Shiva. I like that. But it's a good issue anyway. It gives us some insight into who Vandal Savage is and makes him actually a very plausible villain. If you don't know, Vandal Savage, he's immortal. Well, he's very long-lived. He was basically like sort of a caveman that encountered a meteorite and it prolongs his life. He's been alive 50,000 years. So he thinks very differently. And this gets into like, how would somebody that lives on that scale, how would they think? They think differently at that point. And I appreciated the thought that they gave to it. I felt like they found a way to make Vandal Savage make sense. Just because he's going to think differently. He's not going to think about where is he getting food today. You know, like that's just, you know, yes, he gives a little bit of brain power to it, but he thinks about different things. And it really explains why he has now set himself up as a Batman enemy, because they're like, well, yeah, why? This feels small. Vandal Savage is a guy that goes up against the Justice League and stuff. Why is he installing himself as the commissioner here and giving Batman a hard time? And Alan Scott's like, well, why would he be here? And they're like, oh, well, maybe he needs to be here. Maybe there's something here that's like, you know, like keeping him immortal, right? Like maybe there's a piece of a meteorite here. And if he needs to be here, what would he want to do? He'd probably be holding a grudge against Batman because this is Batman's town. And I was like, yeah, these are all clicking. These are all fitting into place. That Vandal Savage, maybe he's there because he needs to be. And if he's going to be there, he's going to make Batman's life miserable. I liked it. Right. Normally, Gotham City itself isn't probably his goal or anything close to it. He's probably there for something that would have to do with his, you know, like a meteor or something so that he can keep extending his life. But if he's there, he's going to control that area. I liked it. A bunch of talking and nothing gained. To me, I did not get that. It has been very action-packed up to now, and I've loved some of the action sequences. Loved them. But I don't think that that's completely sustainable, to be honest. Even some of my absolute favorite martial arts or action movies, like anything from Hard Boiled, Fist of Legend, Drunken Master 2, the reason I think they ultimately work is they do slow things down and give you some character-based moments where you care about them and you understand what a character wants. So for me, this worked because now I understand what does the villain want, what does the hero want right now. And that means that now they can ramp it up and have another like sort of action set piece next issue, and it's going to mean a little more to me because I understand the stakes a little better. I'm a nerd for structure, so sometimes stuff like that just hits in a way that I don't expect it to hit for everybody. But I didn't think it was talking for no reason. I was really getting something out of it. I thought that it was occasionally funny, insightful. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. I didn't read that run, so I also don't know how he specifically became commissioner, but I'm also willing to just roll with it because I can totally believe that if you're very wealthy, you can probably brush some stuff under the rug or make people doubt what you've actually done as a crime and convince people that you're there to benefit them. I think that with enough money, you can trick a lot of people. Bizzaro Year None came out, and I was definitely curious about this. Kevin Smith is the co-writer, but an artist I really like, Nick Pitara, is the interior artist, and they got Frank Quitely to do the cover, which I think is kind of appropriate because this takes an approach like All-Star Superman, but for Bizzaro's origin. But ultimately, it was hit and miss for me. Did I like the artwork? I did. Did I like that they specifically are focusing on the early days of Jimmy Olsen trying to get a job at the Daily Bugle and his relationship with Perry White? Yeah, I like that too. But do I care that much about Bizzaro's origin? I'm not sure if I really do. some of the banter, or I should just say that, the dialogue between Perry and Jimmy feels great. They've got this like sort of acerbic volley between them. But I'm like, yeah, I can believe that Perry could be convinced eventually that Jimmy has insight as a legit guy that respects the news but is young. Like, he's like making it so hard to get a job, and at one point Jimmy's like, how many young people do you even have trying to get into the newspaper business these days? I'm like, that's a great argument. That really is. So I like the artwork. But I didn't love all of the story. It didn't mean a lot to me. I might stick with it for the art, to be honest. I might. I don't know. This is about like how Bizzaro, I think, gets formed and what his background is, which is just sort of generic. It's just gonna be a bunch of generic sci-fi gobbledygook. I don't know that will be that personal. So I don't know. I love the cover. Frank Quitely is one of my favorites. It's so simple, but there's so much there. Like, the only thing that's really off about him, other than, a bit of like wrinkly skin and crudely stitched together fabric, is that his eyes are just slightly looking off in different directions. It's a great pose. Great pose. Yeah, I could see that. Nick Pitara draws with that lean Claire art style. In other words, not a huge focus on lots of shadows and stuff, but on outlines and giving like a somewhat similar line weight to everything. And just, you're going to know what the foreground and background and middle ground is by compositional elements more than anything else. I think Nick is very, very good. And I think that, to be clear, Nick is definitely a student of Frank Quitely. I would probably be willing to bet you that it was Nick himself who asked Frank to do a cover for this rather than, say, an editor, or at least got that ball rolling. I bet you anything. But I just wasn't super into this story, but I was into the art, and I liked some of the dialogue between Jimmy and Perry. That's about it. I wanted to like it more than I do, but there are elements I do like. Real quick, sort of a spur of the moment decision. I wasn't 100% sure if I needed to read Comics, the magazine issue 2. Nothing against the first issue. I just wasn't sure if it was anything I would do, but I was like, the heck with it. Honestly, $2.99 is a pretty appealing price point when it's a lighter week for me. I was like, yeah, I can fit that in. And they have a few pieces that I like quite a bit. They do have an extended interview with the full Battle Beast team of Kirkman, Otley, but also Annalisa Leone, the colorist, comment from Russ Wooten, the letterer, Sean Makowitz, the publisher. And it was interesting to me. It wasn't necessarily stuff I didn't know, but I still liked hearing how they put it together. There's stuff with Kirkman and Joe Casey and Andy Kubert about the upcoming superhero book Terminal that they're all working on. That was decent. Kind of brief, to be honest. It's just these 2 pages. I would say that that's one area where I might like more of it, and I would say maybe they've edited it down for length and clarity. They say as much. Maybe like give us this, but then like have a little QR code or something so that we could read the full transcript. I don't know how much extra work that would be, but I think it would. I think that would be interesting to me for some of these articles anyway. Not every article or piece was necessarily too interesting to me. I love, for instance, Monstrous by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. This is an article about night eaters, which is a good idea, but it has that same thing of like, look at how tiny this text is. And I guess this is me becoming older, but it's literally not as easy for me to read super tiny text. So, maybe I'm aging out of some of comics in that regard. I don't know. Cool little article about Headlopper. I love Headlopper. It blew my mind to realize that it's 10 years old. Also very short. That's the only thing I have about this is like these articles are very short, but it makes it a little digestible. Anyway, Tony Fleeks and Tim Seeley talk about, I think, a 90s indie book that I don't remember called Vortex, but I kind of appreciated the passion for like just this sort of weird off the beaten path book that they were just going to like just talk about. And then at the very back, folks, they've got some stuff that's kind of interesting. They do this top 10, right? And in the issue 1, I didn't quite get like what their rationale was, because I'm going like top 10 cover artists, and you're not going to include, I don't know, like Peach Momoko or, interior artists. You're not going to include Daniel Warren Johnson. But if I read this, it's based on pre-order and subscription data. So they're being very clinical about this. This isn't necessarily tastemaker stuff. It's a little bit more. They're taking it from data, and I go, okay, if you're pulling it from actual data, I sort of get why some of these people would appear and some other people might not. So I get it a little better in issue 2 is all I can say. Happy to see certain people represented in here. Nick Dragata right up top. Hayden Sherman is somebody I really admire. Got friends, if I'm being honest, like Robert Kirkman, David Nakayama. I feel like I get along with a few other people on here that are nice to see represented. No big surprises, to be honest. The only stuff that's surprising to me is like under a writer, seeing somebody like Dennis Camp be number 6 when I go, oh man, what a year they've had. But again, if they're basing this off of what they are pulling for pre-order and subscription data, okay, I get it then. It's just what it is. I think that they did in some areas, Andy. It was the only thing I really had some trouble with were 2 pieces. The Headlopper one was pretty tiny. Whoops. What just happened there? Okay, there, focused. And the article on Night Eaters was a little tiny, in my opinion. Whereas like this, it's bigger. It's just legit a font type bigger. I think that they're trying to stuff a certain amount of content into a limited amount of pages so that they can keep at this $2.99 price point. I'm a little bit of two minds there because I'm like, I'd love some of these articles to have a bit more space. But if they want to put it like into like the most relevant parts in print and give us a link to read more, I think I might appreciate that. That's just my 2 cents. Oh, yeah, for the top 10, I also don't understand the logic there. I think it should either be always the comic that they do or always a photo of them. I don't quite understand why sometimes it's a drawing, sometimes it's from their comic, sometimes it's a photo. I don't know. I don't get that. Here's one last thing, though, that I did think was clever. Everything that they talk about in here, I think, or even haven't, everything that they talk about in here, they've got a checklist, and you could check it off and take this to your actual comic book store to say, hey, this sounded interesting to me. I want to read this. That's not bad. That's a pretty good little extra call to action that benefits the comic shops and the comic readers. And I could see how that, I think that's really positive. I also liked this thing. If this is like a regular column for them, I like this. The next big thing. and they do an interview with Jim DeMonakis about his new comic convention he's starting, Oakland Comic Con. That's also very interesting to me. I think it's worth the $2.99. I do think it's definitely smaller than the old Wizard, but I also think it's a little more focused and a little less like, there was a lot of pointless stuff in the old Wizard. The only thing that I still think is pointless is this 2-page article on values of like 100 comics. I'm like, that's such a weird way to give me data on back issues. I don't know. Why these 100? What else? Here, I'm just going to doodle a little bit and chat. So, I mentioned at the top of the show, but I will mention it again here. I am going to next week do a different show. And if hopefully it's something that's still kind of fun and cool for like a one-off, that I'm going to be like just co-hosting a claim sale. You're going to get to see some cool original art, even if it's not stuff that you yourself want to bid on. But if you do, there's going to be some really cool pieces. So I hope you'll still tune in. I'll start by doing a little bit of news, and then I'm going to pivot to just sort of playing the color commentator. And we'll do a claim sale because I need to do whatever I can to help with what's going on with our house. Our final estimates, we haven't like been billed all of this quite yet, but our final estimates are it's going to cost at least $80,000 all said and done. $80,000 from the initial emergency plumbing to the demolition, to the treatment, to the rebuilding. The rebuilding, I didn't know this until now, rebuild costs about twice what the demolition and treatment stuff does. So, we're in a good position in terms of how the GoFundMe is going. Just understand, I'm going to do like 2 claim sales to also potentially help us recover from where we're at. And then it'll be back to business as usual, I think, unless people absolutely adore what I'm doing. But I think it's more of just going to be like a kind of a one-off, do something a little different once or twice and just see how it goes. I hope you understand that I need to shift it up and do that. I am going to host SNL. And when my basement flooded, it cost maybe 10. All I can say is I call it my basement. It's more of, I've got a split level house, so it's like half of my house. But I'm not talking about the cost to replace anything like the furniture, the comics, Chrissy's musical instruments, various electronics. We're just saying, no, that stuff's gone, And that's okay. It really is. It's stuff. I can live without stuff. Some of the more expensive elements to the rebuild will be like, for instance, they had to actually destroy our tub/shower. That apparently to like rebuild and install and everything, just that piece might be about $5,000. We had a tough little thing today, Chrissy and I. Well, really, Chrissy. So she made a little bit of a mistake. She went downstairs without shoes on. She was under the impression that the demolition people had like swept and vacuumed everything. And you were coming in just as I was about to mention it, Chrissy. And they haven't. And I should have told her that, I guess, because I didn't. I thought it was obvious that there's still a little bit of debris here and there. And by debris, I mean, some dust, some wood chips, a few screws and nails. Chrissy went downstairs in bare feet and stepped on a screw. She shoved a screw a good 1/4 inch into her foot. Ugh. I am not in a position where I want to say no to any offers for help, Andy. But could you potentially like shoot me like a direct message or email me or something like that? So, because I'm not the one that's hosting the full thing, but if you wanted to and send me an image, I think we could probably include that, and I'd be very flattered if I was able to do that. Not required. Would never beg for any of this. I don't want anybody to overextend themselves, but that would be pretty amazing. Anyway, so it was in there, folks. It was pretty gnarly to see, and that meant Chrissy got a tetanus shot today. Poor thing. So I don't know. Is that my fault for not telling Chrissy that they didn't sweep up everything? I made an assumption, really. I feel bad. I feel a little bad about it. Poor thing. So we had a little adventure. This whole thing has definitely been full of ups and downs emotionally as we get donations, but like then we get estimates, and then we get, what we consider a good price on one thing, and then, insurance is like, no, we're only keeping you at like 10,000 for help. I'm like, oh my God. As a musician to another, the pain of losing an instrument sucks. Hope this helps with that. That's really kind of you. Yeah, Chrissy has a bunch of musical instruments. Unfortunately, she did lose a violin that she likes quite a bit. She's a violinist primarily. So we each lost some things we care about. Thank you for the kindness. It definitely helps us. DC Mad was great. Yeah, I would love more Mad. Even stuff about pop culture and stuff with a mix of comics. But this was a really great focused issue with some top tier talent all the way across the board. Thanks for the super chat. In a Southern lawyer accent, can you share your thoughts on recent movies? Your Honor, I'm not some big city slicker that goes and sees Illumination animations left and right, but I do know this. The Super Mario Galaxy movie is a travesty of immense proportions. No, I do want to catch up at some point on stuff like, what is it, Tuki? I forget the name. I forget the name. Uli? I forget the name of Mignola's latest. I do need to get caught up. Yeah, Chrissy had to give it like 2 big twists as she yanked it out. Sorry. Appreciate you, Andy. No matter what, I really appreciate that sentiment a lot, man. Thank you very much. You guys are all, but thank you for saying that. So kind, so kind. Yeah, talked about that a couple weeks ago when I saw that. I did like Project Hail Mary quite a bit, but I saw. I decided to go after work on like Wednesday or Thursday, I forget which, and I saw the Super Mario Galaxy movie. The reviews haven't been good, but I kind of liked that first one. I thought the first one was kind of funny and cool. I did not like this new one at all, folks. I thought it was so boring. Just so boring. I think that the problem is that they sincerely don't give anybody a character arc where they need to go through a change. They hint at some, but then they walk stuff back or they don't do anything with it after hinting at it. It's stunningly inert. I was so bored by it. I'm sure kids would probably still have a good time because honestly, the animation does look pretty. I would say the music is good. As far as the voices, we've already sort of heard who does what. I like Charlie Day. I like Charlie Day as Luigi. But it was boring. It was so boring. I do not recommend it at all. It's weird. It's like you get equity technically, but sometimes it just really hurts what you have to do to keep up with it. It's a lot of stuff where just like it's forcing in stuff going like, hey, you know how you've seen this in a video game before? Look, you get to see that. But to what end? It doesn't mean it much for most of it. Maybe. I really couldn't say for sure. I guess they could. And that would probably appeal to a certain percentage of the audience. It doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. I wish I liked it more. I like Super Mario in general. But I can't recommend that movie at all, really. Maybe once it gets to streaming and you're at home. But I would not go out and see it in the theater. If I could avoid it, I would take back that time. I would rather have the time back. Agreed on house stuff. My wife thinks I hate our house. It's just that I hate constantly dumping money into it. And, you know, there's some renovations that we really need to do at some point that we're just putting off. But I think every homeowner does that for the most part. You know, we've got a fence out back that fell down. I'd love to fix that, but I got to fix the living area first. Yeah, there's other stuff like our chimney that should probably be redone, but if it's not an emergency, you sort of back burner certain things. It's just what it is. I don't want to be depressing and talk about that stuff. I would say that Glenn Powell as the voice of Star Fox made sense. His personality was good, but it's like he comes in as a certain character and his goal is like, you know, he wants to get home, but absolutely nothing is done towards that. It's just like he's just sort of there. It didn't mean... Yeah, so they'll make another. It's making money. What else? I have recorded and am currently editing the next comic Tropes. So just know that that's going to come out. I think I should definitely have that out before the weekend. My goal while making it was to sort of limit how many comics I'm talking about within something so that like the editing time was reasonable. I think I've got a fun episode. It's Spider-Man focused as well, which always helps a little bit with the algorithm. But just something that I feel like I haven't seen other people talk about for a video anyway. I'll keep the rest of it a little bit of a surprise, but I think people will enjoy it. And then I really want to do some more about, like, you know, I've done now 2 in a row that are more talking about a piece of history, which is interesting, but I want to focus on artist techniques. And the 2 that I've really had in my mind lately are both modern. I've been thinking a lot about both Sanford Green and Trad Moore. They each have interesting art styles that I think would be a personal challenge to think of how to describe what they do. But that interests me a lot. There's also some artists from the past that I keep putting off, but I want to get to, like Hugo Pratt. I think Hugo Pratt is honestly really influential. That's funny. I was just pushing a book to the side over here, and it happens to be one of the Corto Maltese books by Hugo Pratt, specifically Ballad of the Salty Sea. That's funny. That was just a coincidence. Let me acknowledge this. Very grateful. That review made my day. I saw it a few hours ago. I honestly fell asleep the first 5 minutes. Oh, you're talking Super Mario Galaxy? Stunningly inert. just not made for adults. You have to be a big Mario fan or very young and not having seen many movies to sort of get distracted by just the animation. It just doesn't have much of a story. It just has some things happen. It just has thing happen. But more than that, it really is that thing that, a lot of critics will accuse movies of doing, of member berries, where it's like, hey, remember this? Remember this? It really, really felt like that to me, where I don't always agree on, like, say, a certain Star Wars movie. They're like, oh, they put in, TIE fighters because we recognize them. I'm like, yeah, it's part of the world. Like, that doesn't bother me. Some of the stuff in this, I was just like, and I'm trying not to spoil it, but I'll just say this because it's not really a story spoiler. Did the movie need baby Mario and baby Luigi, for instance? And that's not even the most egregious, but I was just sort of like, I remember when that's happening and I'm going, but what's this doing? It did so little. It's interesting seeing Benny Safdie do quite a bit of acting after having such success as a director, because wasn't he also the one that was in that Adam Sandler Happy Gilmore 2? Wasn't that the same Safdie brother? He's the less problematic Safdie brother, I believe. I don't know. I don't mind the animation. I think it looks good enough. Better than good enough. I would love something with a little more personality, but I think that there is a depth and a detail to it that's consistent. And it's animated enough for me. But yeah. Mike, thank you for the super chat. What a fun question. What's my favorite thing to draw? I'm thinking. If I was to be a little boring, I would say just faces. When I doodle, I probably draw faces and really focus on the eyes a lot. What else do I enjoy drawing buildings if I can heavily reference them. And I'll do a lot of my own thing, but I enjoy drawing like alleys where I can throw in a ton of, say, power lines and signs and just really clutter it up. But I do have a hard time inventing all of that wholesale. So usually I will need like some reference, but I kind of like that. But if it's drawing without reference, like people, horses are tough for me. Horses are tough. I've drawn them and I do enjoy drawing them, but I have to look at a picture to be sure that I'm getting the musculature right. Horse are really a lot of animals. Tricky. Mario 93 versus Mario Galaxy. Sonic movies more. That's true. I would agree with you there. The Sonic movies are pretty fun. Trying to remember Mario 93. Is that Mario 64? Was that 93? Is that what you're talking about? Or was there a different one in 93? No, it was probably a different one. Mario 64 was probably more like 97, wasn't it? What was Mario 93? I probably didn't play it. I don't think I had a Super Nintendo. I didn't have a Super Nintendo, so I probably didn't play it. Oh, was it the live action movie that came out in 93? Oh, man. Oh, so you're saying I get it. Super Mario 93 or Mario Galaxy. Like two bad movies. Huh. That's an interesting, almost mean question to ask me. Yeah, some people say, like, for nostalgia's sake, they kind of like the Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo live action movie. I really don't like that live action Mario movie. I guess if I was gun to my head, I'd watch Mario Galaxy before the live action one, I guess. 93 would be more fun if I had 2 or 3 friends and we were making fun of it, but by myself, that would be hard. Oh, that's right. I did see Detective Pikachu on an airplane, actually. I wasn't that into it. I remember being very bored with it. But I'm just not into the lore enough to understand it all. I think visually it's interesting as a Blade Runner knockoff, just not as a Mario movie. Oh, yeah, the Mario 93. Maybe. Mario 93 for trash movie? Maybe. But then I start thinking of all the crazy stuff Dennis Hopper's been in that we could do. It starts feeling like fun, like to do something where Dennis Hopper just played a crazy guy. What else can I talk about? Is there anything else that's super important? I haven't really seen any TV stuff. We canceled our subscriptions there. I've got YouTube. Don't think I really watched anything else. There's still some free services you can use, which is kind of cool, like Tubi and Pluto TV, I want to say. There's some good free services out there, to be honest. Dennis Hopper was in the 4th Crow movie. I don't think I watched any past the first 2. Did I see the 3rd one? I didn't see it. Boy, did I really hate that recent Crow reboot. Ugh. The Boys is back. I might still have Amazon Prime because I've kept my Prime, so I think I've got the ad version of Prime, so maybe I'll get to watch that. I'm aware that it exists, but no, I've never seen Storage Wars. Oh, right. He was in A Good Time. That's right. I'm looking forward to Odyssey by Nolan. That looks pretty amazing to me. That looks so cool. That looks so cool to me. Yeah, I'm excited to see that. Trying to think if there's anything else coming up for movies that I'm especially excited for. I mean, I'm curious, of course, about the Marvel and DC movies. I don't know that I'm necessarily all that amped for them. Probably a little more excited for the Spider-Man one than I am for the Avengers one. In some ways, it's not great for Marvel. I'm probably like, I should be like the main audience. But I mean, I think I'll see it. I just don't know that I'm that excited for it. I hope it pleasantly surprises me. I don't think that the MCU has gotten like individually, like the movies aren't necessarily outright bad, but I don't think that they hang together as well as they did at the beginning. But it really felt like they were building to something very clear originally. And I just think that should be what you do, no matter which next 5 or 6 movies you do, just say that they're building to the next Avengers or whatever you want to call the crossover. Defenders or Champions. I don't care what you call it. Call it after an event, Just give it an event name, but yeah. I would legitimately pay cash money for Mafud doing a comic adaptation of 93. Jim has done some adaptations of some stuff you wouldn't expect. Check out his Miami Vice comic. It's okay. There's my sister. She's apologizing for missing most of tonight. I assume it's because you've been playing with your new dog. How dare you? I've been told Sonic IDW series is decent. Go fast. It might be. I've just never been a huge Sonic guy. I think I played the first 2 video games that they had, and I liked them just fine. And that was about it. I didn't think I'd be into the movies, but I saw them, and they were kind of entertaining. I didn't dislike any of the movies, but yeah, I wouldn't say I've ever been too hugely a fan of Sonic lore, so I don't really know his stuff too well. That is pretty cool for Brian K. Vaughan. Pretty big opportunity. Puppy needed a long walk. Well, good for you. I know that you loved that, and it's good for both of you. Who's Travis Scott? Is that like a musician? Sounds a little familiar, but I can't place it. Sorry. I'm old. I can't keep up with your young references. How dare you? How dare you assume that I would keep up with your references? The next comic tropes that I was talking about, by the way, that will come out by the weekend. I'm pretty confident I can get it edited in time for Saturday or something. It's going to have a slightly different angle. Like, it isn't going to be, like, this is more or less what you see on most of my episodes, just backed up a little, right? Like, you kind of have blocked out most of this stuff. But I just don't have a way to put that camera here anymore, which is where I have to edit, because there's nowhere else this can fit, like, to edit. This is like I'm live streaming where I edit. So the camera is like right over here. So it's aimed at a little bit of an angle. So you don't see the comic spinner rack anymore, and you see some of the blue wall, but it's the only way I can like fit it all in this relatively small room. Oh, sorry, here. Travis Scott made the ending song for Christopher Nolan's Tenet. Tenet is the only Nolan movie that I just couldn't get into. I mean, I watched it, but I didn't get anything out of that one. Too weird. I mean, I understood it, but at least I think I did. Yeah, I am a little familiar with that. And I read up on that a little when I did an episode about Sonic sort of early on in my YouTube career, maybe a year or two in. Maybe more than that. It's hard to remember. And I definitely read about it. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, that's the most interesting stuff to talk about. Not the comic like I did, but like more the behind the scenes drama with Ken Penders. But by the time I realized that, a couple other comic book YouTubers had already talked about that. And I didn't want to just sort of like encroach on stuff that had already been covered pretty thoroughly. I don't know what I would really add to that conversation at that point. I wish I'd approached it differently, because I think the behind the scenes drama way more interesting than reviewing an actual random comic. But, you live and learn. I have not heard that. I know that Christopher Nolan appreciates the James Bond franchise. I do too. Circuitron got to meet Beasley. That's awesome. I got to meet him at a Rose City Comic-Con down in Portland, Oregon, a couple years ago. He was so nice. So nice. Really admire him. That's really cool. I've thought about talking about You Decide and Marvel. But it's Marvel. Good Lord, I need to lose some weight. Oh, well. Marvel is so bad that I don't find it like funny bad to talk about. I find it just depressing bad. Like, I can't believe they made this, and I don't know what to say about it. I think who's the guy that makes fun of comics? Linkara. I kind of respect Linkara for doing it this long, by the way. I can't watch all of it because I don't want to. It's not what interests me the most, but I've seen some Linkara. Of course I have. He's been doing this for forever. I think he did Marvel. I didn't watch that, but I think he did it. But I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it justice anyway. Because it's like, if I make fun of it, it's more just like out of hate and anger as compared to I think I can make good jokes about it because it's so bad. And if I just talk about sort of the behind the scenes and the comic itself, I don't think it's that interesting. It's like the boss said he was going to make a comic and he had a bad sense of humor, so it doesn't come out very funny. So I don't think I have a whole lot to say about that one. I wish I did. I wish I did because it is significant, the whole you decide and stuff. But I don't. Maybe as a short, maybe I've got like a tidbit I could say, and I could do it as a short. But I don't think I could. I don't think I could do a full episode about it. Ultimates 3 and Ultimatum. I did do one about Ultimatum, which I was surprised by how dark Marvel went with it. And then you sort of realize like, oh, Jeff Loeb, the writer, was going through some very sad stuff in real life. And I bet you anything that influenced how dark that comic went. And what's funny is like, it's clearly designed to end the Ultimate Universe. And then Marvel was like, but let's actually keep it going. And you're like, you just wiped out more than half of your characters and you want to keep going? Okay. I don't know. I think so. I don't think it has a very good thumbnail, but I think I might have used the word worst in it. And if you say something like this is the worst or something like that, it's going to get more views. But I don't want to use that trick every single week. Have I been to Point Roberts? I don't know. Chrissy may have taken me there. If so, I don't remember. I've been to a couple places that are Point something or other, so maybe. I've had fun tonight, folks. Tried ending the 1610 quite a few times. There was Cataclysm 2. Oh, the universe. Right. Yeah. Spider-Man. I'll just leave it at that. It's a Spider-Man bit of history. So I've got that recorded and started to edit it, so that's good. I got to work tomorrow. So can't really edit tonight or tomorrow. Well, a little tonight, I think I will. But then I think I have Thursday and Friday to edit, and that should be enough time to do it. Editing takes several days. Editing takes a lot of days. One of your worst on videos is to Civil, and that's before I understood anything about like thumbnails or titles. So it was just me putting what I honestly thought and things and not even trying to play any sort of a game with what the algorithm might pick up. But yeah, I did not like Civil War or Civil War II. Ugh, not fun. I did hear about Paul. Yes, Paul. Yeah, and I think that's honestly true for a lot of creators, just to be clear. Especially like the biggest ones, the ones that have like several million. Most of their most popular videos are going to be about something ridiculous or bad. It's just what the algorithm picks up. Yeah. It's fair, I guess. I missed that. It's too bad, and at the same time, I sort of get why people would be more interested in that kind of a framing. It catches your interest. So it's tricky to make a positive headline as interesting. I could say why this was the best Spider-Man run or the best X-Men run. And I think I even have done stuff like that. But it doesn't hook somebody the same way. So, I sort of do a mix with titles where I'll try some that are maybe a little more clickbaity just to see how it works. And sometimes I'll just not feel like playing that game and I'll just be very honest, like saying like the history of blah, 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 or the techniques of so-and-so. In the last couple of years, YouTube has added a fairly useful tool for content creators where you upload your video and you can do what's called an A/B test with 3 different titles and thumbnails. And then you get a report to see if one of them does much, much better. And if so, you clearly just sort of choose that and the other 2 go away. It's a nice little tool. I would still say most of the time my ideas get like sort of a 33%, 33%, 33%, even when I'm trying to do something a little different. So I'll just go with whatever I think is nicest. I think you really have to. If you're serious about getting content noticed, I don't think it's completely dishonest. I think it's a bit of a game where you're exaggerating, as long as you're not lying. You know, I'm not going to say like the worst manga ever, absolutely disgusting, and then sort of the review going like it's not that bad. But I'll tell you. So yeah. The finance channels I watch all have serious-looking dudes in the thumbnails looking grim, even if there's no bad news. Yeah, so we all kind of know it at this point. Just game it. Is Dradmore the worst comic artist of all time? And just open it with, no, he's great. What's funny is if you ask a question in the title, some people clearly don't watch the video and just put in a comment going like yes or no. And I have to like go like, what did I title this again? I'm like just sort of like looking to make sure that there's nothing objectionable. I'm like quickly flicking through comments and I'm just seeing like no, no. And I'm going, oh, I guess I must have used a question for this title. And people are just saying no. It's kind of funny that I'm like, I forget what I've created. It's, you know what I realized just last night is I think I'm like 2 months away from having done comic tropes specifically for 10 years straight. I'm like, how did that happen? I feel like I'm still like a new content creator, but that's because I've come up watching content before there was even YouTube. So I think it was like today, the Angry Video Game Nerd says, today is my 20th anniversary of posting Angry Video Game Nerd videos. And I'm like, I've been watching those since the beginning. That's amazing. 20 years. Doesn't feel like that long to me. Do you know what a rhetorical question is? Yes. I still need to see both of those. I've only seen the Del Toro Hellboy movies. I'm more curious about the Crooked Man one, just because I'm curious what they could do with low budget. Do a live stream from an LCS for your anniversary. It's an interesting idea. I don't know that I've got a great idea for doing anything to really celebrate an anniversary. I mean, it's not like it's not the same as saying, I hit 1 million subscribers. That's like a big deal, but like, is 10 years necessarily that big a deal? Or is that just like, oh, this guy has a hobby that got out of control? It's like when you go, I remember, I don't know where I was, but I was like on a road trip and I passed a sign that said something like world's biggest miniature train display. And it was like maybe in Pennsylvania or something like that. And you go in and it felt less like going into a museum and more like, oh, this guy let his hobby get out of control. 10 years feels like less, hey, look at what I've created, and more just like, boy, that guy sure talked about comics a little too much to me. I would love, if I have an idea, I'll do something, but I don't really have an idea, to be honest. I don't really have an idea. I could do an 8-hour charity stream. Oh, that would hurt. That hurts. What? Let me see this. That's nice. Getting a text from Comic Tom because we're gonna do a whatnot live stream together, I think on the 24th. But the 13th next week is I'm going to do that sort of claim sale with Dynamite. We're going to put up some of Nick Barucci's own original art collection. He's going to, put a price on it. Boom, you can claim it. Might get something for a really good price. There's certainly going to be some amazing artists in there. You can't have been doing this for 10 years because that would mean I'm old. Actually, I'm quite young. And 2015 was just a few years ago. Correct. Yeah, you'll have to fly out because I definitely can't afford to fly out to you. Just to be clear. It was something like that. I'm honestly going back to something like 96 or 97, maybe. I didn't expect to get so many interesting questions. It's fun to sort of do an AMA at the end of these every once in a while. Oh yeah, I do remember that. But there wasn't a whole lot to say other than like, hey, look, here's like 50 panels that he traced, But yeah, Gene Simmons, Kiss, his son was making a manga and he just traced panels, like just a ton of them. Eclipse episode. Oh my God. That sounds fun, but I'd need like an assistant to like sort of find the moments for me because there's just so much footage at this point to go through. It would be kind of fun to go back and just find things like the little stunts and things like where I get a pie to the face or I drop something that breaks or, like when I have the squib go off and explode, things like that. That would be, or the dummy going over the banister. Comic tropes. That would be funny. What else is going on? Most of my day, aside from either my day job or editing right now, almost all the extra time is just spent talking to various different types of repair people and insurance, trying to get that all sorted. So it's not that exciting, I guess, to talk about. I don't think I have all of Infotron anymore. I'm sad to say. I'm pretty sure that I might have the head, but the box body part was one of the things that got ruined in the flood. So I'd have to rebuild him from scratch, more or less. I happen to have, for some reason, I don't know why, I guess I was trying to save things, I grabbed one of his arms and it ended up here. Let me just pull that. So I've got one Infotron arm. There. Look, I'm 25% Infotron. I loved building Infotron back when that must have been my first year of doing the show. It's just a fun idea to think of building an old-fashioned cardboard robot suit. The reason I kind of phased Infotron out relatively quickly is there was another comic book channel that was bigger than mine at the time, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It's a female host. I don't think she does a show anymore, but I wasn't aware of it when I created Infotron, and then maybe it was a comment or maybe I came across it in the algorithm, but I found this other comic book YouTuber, and she had sort of a 1950s style robot co-host for, I think, all the episodes. And I was like, oh, well, I don't want to seem like I'm ripping off something that's already out there. I think that was it. And is that person still around? I certainly don't see it recommended in the algorithm. Maybe she changed what she discusses, though. I just realized. But I think that was the channel, and she had a robot, right? Yeah. Anyway, fun to think back to some of that stuff. trying to think of like the next way to change comic tropes, like to just sort of have it evolve and not get too stale. But I'm not 100% sure what that would be yet. No kidding. Says she's Danica now. She was actually pals with Ed Piskor. Well, same. I didn't know that. All right, folks. I think I'm going to wrap up the show. I've had a great time with everybody. If you're in a position to help my wife and I repair our house, there is a link in the description to our GoFundMe. On a smaller scale, you can become a Patreon member. There are levels where you could get perks. And the link for that is also in the description. And just keep in mind, next week's show, I'm going to do a more condensed news segment and then pivot into doing a claim sale, doing something a little different. It's comictropes@gmail.com. Always happy to get fan art. Yeah. I got some like a week ago, and it was really fun to see. It went way down once I stopped giving away random gachapon prizes, but I'm sorry, folks. I hate going to the post office, and I was bad at it, and I was always getting backed up. I wish I could motivate people to do that, but yeah, that's okay. I've had a wonderful time tonight. I hope you learned something. I hope you're reading some comics that you absolutely are passionate about and are enjoying. I hope that you're inspired to do something creative, because that's just one of the best feelings, in my opinion, that you can have, is creating something. I will see you next week. You'll see me before that, because there will be a new Comic Tropes. I'm hard at work on that. And yeah, until I see you next time, you know the marching orders. I'm sort of getting this out with a little bit of stuttering. Keep reading comics. Oh, before I leave, I got to acknowledge, I got a super chat, a couple of bucks for Infotron 2.0. All right, noted. $2 Canadian, which is honestly about what it should cost to make him. All right. Peace and love, everybody. Keep reading comics. Bye.